Prior to Modern Wisdom, Chris was a club promoter for a decade. I've run one of the biggest events companies in all of the UK. I've seen 1 million drunk people go in and out of club nights that I've stood on the door of. I've run more than 1,000 events. I was a professional party boy for a long time. And it gives you a very unique insight into human nature, watching people get drunk
Hmm.
consistently. And I did some reality TV stuff. I spent a lot of time trying to grow clout through being on TV and being around the right people and playing that club promo game and so on and so forth. And then just got to a stage where I thought this isn't really aligned with who I want to be, with what I want to do, which was an uncomfortable realization to come to, as many people get to, I think, maybe towards the end of their 20s. I dub it for men the menopause, but there might be an equivalent for girls. I think girls mature a little bit quicker than guys sometimes. Uh, but yeah, I got there, spent a ton of time doing self inquiry, and part of that journey was to start the podcast so that I was exposed to new, interesting people. And yeah, 3 years on from that now, and somehow it's what I spend most of my time doing. Whatever version of the simulation that we've ended up in apparently permits podcaster to be a job, which is ridiculous. But I still run club nights. I still stand on the door. I still stand on the door of clubs, just not during a pandemic.
Do you do it because it's fun and it gets you out and socializing?
So originally, I did it because I like to party because I was 18,
Mhm,
and when you're 18, everybody likes to party.
mhm.
And then I found that I could make a lot of money quite quickly. Um, the costs for events are quite low, and you can generate a lot of cash flow very quickly. Then I found most of the competition, the other club promoters that were out there, were just they were just people that like to get drunk and realize they could get paid for it. No one treated it like a business.
Mhm.
Whereas me and my business partner, we went in with I'd done a master's in international marketing and business, and he'd done a degree in business as well. So we went into it with very much a business mindset, and we're very competitive. So it moved from being recreational drinking to professional drinking to professional business. And after a while, it was almost holding me back a little bit. I think I was staying um, in an old version of me.
Mhm.
And again, lots of people that are listening may be familiar with this. The thing that you did during formative years of your life that gave you a sense of identity and meaning, and I mean, you'll know as well, you've made a pivot within your own career,
I know I was
like
gonna compare
getting
'em.
rid of those trappings, right? Like,
Mhm.
absolutely. So tell me, like, how has that pivot been for you?
So I wanted to get onto this because it's very rare that I get to meet someone that has probably faced similar issues. So I would imagine doing reality TV and being this, professional party boy, that when you launch this really amazing podcast and you tackle some, heavy topics and you have these heavy hitting intellectuals on, that maybe they kind of stigmatized you a little bit, or they thought, oh, he's just, this party boy or this airhead. Or and I also didn't know that you were so into fitness up until recently, and then you have your Twitter header where you're just jacked. So that obviously some people have their predispositions about that too, because in a way it's also selling sex or sexual appeal, right? So I had a similar issue, obviously, pivoting from the porn career into podcasting, and people are like, she's just this dumb bimbo, I'm not going to listen to her podcast. So I have had some really open-minded people. I think Gadsad helped me out a ton because he was my whale that kind of got on, and he put me on his channel, and he was just so great about the whole episode that I think it really helped to get a lot of other guests and get some other listeners to take me seriously. But then I've had some other people that were scheduled, and then I think that maybe their team was like, this isn't such a good idea. Let's not associate with her brand. So it's still new. It's been less than a year, but there's definitely been some hurdles. So I'm curious if you had similar ones.
It's a really interesting question. First thing is my visibility of what I used to do, and perhaps the extremity of what I used to do isn't quite as comparable as your previous career
Of
might have
course.
been. If you were to Google my name, or like one of my past monikers or something, an alias that I used to use, it was different things would come up. Um, But
Slightly.
yes, it's difficult. It's difficult. It's difficult to dispense with the old characters that you used to have.
Mhm,
One thing, here's an interesting conversation that almost no one ever has, right? As a good looking woman, you will understand some of the preconceptions that people have around you when you try and enter into an arena which isn't using your looks. So, specifically, something like
mhm,
podcasting, right? We all know about that, like, um, superhero movie freak of a girl who happens to be like a 10 out of 10, but also like she's a super genius in quantum physics or something
right,
like that, like the Wonder Woman type
mhm,
thing. Um, and but I don't think that there's an equivalent archetype for guys. I don't think that good looking guys have an equivalent level of acceptance, because when you are an all right looking dude, what you get is zero sympathy. The first thing that happens is there is absolutely no sympathy at all that comes for you. And I actually put something in my newsletter the other day that I think really relates to this quite nicely. So it says that this quote from Wilt Chamberlain: "Nobody roots for Goliath. People largely privilege the emotional states of a low power character over those of a high power character. Basically, we have a natural affinity to the underdog. I think it's why we love rags to riches stories, fat people who've got fit, and inspirational motivation. It reminds us that if everything goes wrong for us, we might be able to get out of the muck and mire too. That person is also seen as less of a threat because their success seems less secure. If they came from nothing, then maybe they'll go back to nothing. So we don't need to worry about them competing with us as much." And one of the things, like, imagine every X Factor or singing competition show that you've ever seen. Think about the archetype of the guy or the girl who's maybe not super good looking, and they're kind of, their shoulders are down and they're sort of mumbling to the floor, and they've something bad's happened in the past, and everyone's like getting behind them and like, look, come on, let's give them some encouragement here. And then they belt out this tune and they're like, oh my god, how amazing, how romantic, what a beautiful sort of story to listen to.
mm,
Now flip that story on its head and have that person be a really good looking guy or girl. Everything
mhm,
changes. Everybody presumes that because it would appear outwardly that they've got everything sorted, that inwardly they should have a sense of self-confidence and self-esteem as well.
mhm,
But that's not the way it works. Your outward appearance has absolutely, well, it has almost zero bearing on what's going on inside. Some of the best looking people that I know are some of the most fucked up ones
yeah,
internally. And that means that your external appearance has very little bearing on your internal state. So yeah, to round that up, I think there's so many interesting points to talk about. Just not judging people's exterior state as like some window into what's going on inside, and it would make life a lot easier for everybody
I
if they did
totally
that.
agree. There was a point in time where I was on social media and I was being vulnerable about something. I think it had to do with the self-esteem thing. I don't know what kind of triggered that conversation, but I actually had more negative comments than people that were like, I can relate, or thank you for sharing this story. It was, the common theme was similar to, well, how dare you complain because you're a good looking female? Or how dare you say that you're insecure? Because imagine what it's like for someone else. It's like, that doesn't matter. It doesn't, I'm not constantly living with a mirror in front of me. If even if like I was universally good looking, which I don't think anybody is, right? We all have had these moments where someone tore us down or we just felt bad about ourselves. And especially when you're younger and those kind of puberty stages, we're all a little weird and going through changes, and some of those things last. So we almost have more sympathy, like you said, for the underdog or the less fit or the not so good looking. But if you're ranked anywhere on a scale, it's like, how dare you be anything but happy all of the time? And that's not realistic.
Well, I get it. Like, to anybody that's listening, it's like, oh no, being good looking so hard. Like, it's not a very
Right.
compelling narrative. Like, I understand, but if you think that the way that someone looks is a direct indicator of how fulfilled and meaningful they are inside, then you're not a
Mhm.
serious thinker. You haven't spent any time really properly thinking about this. By that virtue, you'd say that anyone who's ugly can never be
Mhm.
fulfilled. You're like, okay, well, that's not true. So
Mhm.
let's flip it on its head. Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird one.